Yes, yes, yes. Hello, 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 hello. Hello and welcome, and thank you for registering for this very critical webinar session. My name is Jason Wallace, also known as the Restaurant Scientist and Director of Business Solutions at EatOkra. And for those of you joining us for the first time, EatOkra is the go-to app for discovering Black-owned restaurants nationwide. Where food, culture, and community connect, EatOkra has united over 330,000 foodies to culinary creators and restaurateurs like yourself. But that's not all we do. At EatOkra, we also help our members discover methods to grow and scale their culinary businesses with one-on-one consulting services, and free webinars, such as this one that you're watching tonight. We feature insight from host and industry experts. So if you are a Black restaurateur, culinary expert, caterer, food truck owner, or even a food product developer, and you haven't already joined the EatOkra community, go to our website at www.eatokra.com and sign up today. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all past and future webinars, plus more. Now, let's get into it. For those of you that may or may not be aware of the Restaurant Revitalization Grant, let me give you a little background. On March 11th, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 created a $28.6 billion Restaurant Revitalization Fund to provide grants for restaurants sustaining financial losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On April 17th, the United States Small Business Administration, US SBA, issued necessary federal rules, regulations, and a sample application to distribute the grant funds. Now, one thing I want to point out to you, this is a grant. This is forgivable. This is not a loan. It is not tied to personal credit score or personal guarantees, which is why it's important that EatOkra brings you this type of free information. So the Restaurant Revitalization Grants, let's talk a little bit about eligibility. Who is eligible for the Restaurant Revitalization Grant? Entities that own a place of business where public or patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food or drinks, including restaurants, food stands, food trucks, food carts, snack and non-alcoholic beverage bars, caterers, bar lounges, saloons, taverns. So again, the idea for us is to get on this internet, on the webinar, and really expose you to some information because the application process started today. $28.6 billion is going to be given away to those qualified entities, and the application process started today, and it's a first-come, first-served basis. So we want to encourage you to make sure that you have questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We are monitoring the chat, and I will address as many questions as I can. But again, the idea is that this will be an information session that will allow you to understand how to apply. Now, there are some situations that will disqualify an entity from the Restaurant Revitalization Grant. And as of March 13th, 2020, the entity owns or operates, any entity that owns or operates more than 20 locations, regardless of where those locations do business, those are not qualified. So basically, from 1 to 20 locations is qualifications. Anything over 20, you do not qualify for, right? Nonprofit organizations do not qualify. If you are permanently closed down, you do not qualify. If you entered or filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 7 or are liquidating under Chapter 11, you do not qualify, all right? And any entity that has filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 11, 12, or 13, but does not have the approved plan for recognition, for reorganization, are those individuals or entities that do not qualify. So the question may be, okay, when does eligibility entity have to be established to receive this grant? An entity must have been established to incur eligibility expenses before March 11th, 2021, which was, again, only a few months ago. All right, if an entity was not open prior to January 1, 2020, it is still eligible for the grant. Even if the entity has not opened by the date of the application, it can apply for eligible expenses incurred in preparation to opening. So this is a very liberal grant. These rules and regulations are very flexible. And again, this is why we wanted to bring this information to your attention, because many people are not aware of it. What is the minimum and maximum amount an entity can receive? The minimum amount is $1,000 that you can receive. The maximum grant amount is $5 million per location, with a maximum of $10 million. Again, with the eligibility being between 1 and 20 locations. So many of you may have multiple restaurants under multiple EIN numbers. You can apply for as many restaurants as you own, as long as you don't go over 20, and the maximum will be $10 million that you can apply for. Okay, so let's go through and talk a little bit about the process, right? And how you will receive the funds. Okay. I'm just trying to, application, what documents do you need? So let's talk a little bit about documents. So for those of you that don't keep good books, this is something that may actually hurt you, because you do need, even though it's liberal, you do need to understand that you need to come to the application process with these things already filled out and PDF'd and be able to upload when you go to the SBA website. Please be organized ahead of time. If you need a couple of days to do it, again, the application process started today. We encourage people to try to get their documentation together as soon as possible, so that you should submit within the next, at least 24 hours to, the end of the week. All right. So the documents that you will need: application form, IRS form 4506T, as well as your gross receipts. So let me just let me break this down a little bit for you. What's the definition of gross receipts? It refers to the total amount of revenue taken in from whatever your sources of products and services that you provide. Gross receipts, right? That means that any dividends, any interest, any royalties, any fees, any commissions that you receive, it's gross receipts, not gross income, right? Gross income refers to the total amount of money that you have minus the deductions of your expenses. This is gross receipts, all right? So the application form 3172 must be completed and initialed and signed. Verification of tax information from the IRS 4506T. So a 4506T is simply a verification that authorizes, when you fill it out, saying you authorize the SBA to actually pull your taxes from the previous year, 2019. Most people did not file 2020. Don't worry, that's not a problem. That's not going to stop you from applying and or receiving this grant. So I'm just trying to let you understand what some of these applications are. The form 4506T is just a request that they're going to say, okay, they're going to submit a request to the IRS, and you're approving that so that they could request your tax reforms from previous year, preferably, really about 2019. Gross receipts documents, we said that already. Make sure that if your business tax returns have been filed, which is a form 1120. Now, 1120 is a U.S. corporate tax return. So it comes in two forms, 1120 and 1120S, depending on what type of formation you have. So if you have a corporation, a C Corp, then you're going to file 1120. If you have an S Corp, you're going to file a 1120S. Again, your accountant or whoever has been doing your tax returns, that information should be in your 2019 tax returns. So again, they're not asking you to create some new forms that you don't have. I'm just trying to give you a definition of them so that when you go and you speak to your accountant, you'll know what to ask for. Okay. Applications. Okay. The application process between January 1, 2020, right, and March 10th, 2021. So that means that your restaurants are going to fall within a few different categories, right? You either operating before January 1st, 2019, right? And you have your 2019 returns. Or you were operating after that. Then you still can apply because clearly COVID started in 2020, but they're giving you that much leeway between 2019, 2020, and 2020, 21. So even if you were, again, in the process of opening, I have some clients that started opening and should have opened last March or May, last April, May, or March or May, and the COVID delayed them. They still qualify for the loan, all right? So we talked about tax returns for your 1120s or your 1120s, depending on the type of corporate formation you have. IRS 1040, you're going to need that as well. Again, depending on the type of formation you have, a 1065, if you're a partnership, you're going to need that 1065, including the Schedule K. A Schedule K1 is when it shows the delineation of the shares within your partnership. So if you're a partnership, if you're a C Corp, if you're an LLC, if you're an S Corp, all of those formations are okay. You just need to make sure that you have the proper documentation to submit along with your application. And again, have these things already preloaded, PDF'd, so that all you have to do is upload them when you go through the process for the application. And we'll talk about the step-by-step process for applying for the grant after I go through the criteria. So again, if you have any questions along the way, please put them in the chat. Marvin is monitoring the chat. Marvin, you have any questions for me so far?
Yes, we have a question from Mark Jeffries.
Yes.
He says, I formed my LLC and got my EIN number in 8/2020, but I just got my location last week and am looking at a July opening. Haven't filed taxes yet. Is there anything or any way to get some of the grant money?
Yeah, so what you have to do is, and let me just say this from the top, and actually I should have said it earlier. This, I am not an accountant. I am not giving you accounting advice. I am not an attorney. I am not giving you legal advice, right? I'm just giving you information that is coming down from the SBA, Small Business Authority Association. So what I recommend you do is, if you haven't opened yet, you really have to speak with your accountant and figure out which of the expenses, because you can, and I'll answer some of those questions a little later, but you can apply. If COVID held you up from opening, you have to demonstrate that. Right? You have to demonstrate that you had a lease signed, you have a mortgage. Even if you own the building and you're leasing to yourself, you still can apply, but you just have to have the documentation that verifies what delayed your opening, and if it was due to COVID, then you can qualify for some of those things. So again, this is not legal advice. This is not accounting advice. This is just information that we want to share with you to get it out there so that you can get anything as minimum as $1,000. $1,000 is better than $0, and as high as $10 million, depending on how many different types of restaurants you have. All right, so let me just go back. I'm going down the checklist of what you need. Again, you need to fill out the tax returns, IRS 1120, 1120S, the 1040, Schedule C, Schedule F, and your partnership, which is a 1065, including your K1s. You'll need bank statements, the last 3 months of bank statements. So what is this, May? So that's February, March, and April bank statements. If you, in your bank account, we'll talk about it again later, do not open up a newer bank account for this, because they will not approve sending you money to a bank account that has been open less than 3 months ago. All right. So Whatever your EIN number was, whatever your legal agency was, and wherever that you were doing banking, that's the account that you're going to link to this application, because they're going to directly deposit this money directly into your account. And they're not trying to hear, oh, well, I just opened up a new account. They're not trying to hear that. All right. So I talked about bank statements. Externally and internally prepared financial statements are accepted. So that means that even again, when you talk about 2020 or 2021, if you've opened now since they've relaxed the seating capacity, you can, so if you were open January, February of this year, those numbers count. So you can have your accountant prepare a year-to-date financial statement, profit and loss, and it's not even about the losses. They're not concerned whether you made money or lost money. They're not concerned about your expenses. They want your gross receipts, referred to the total amount of revenue that you've taken in. All right? Gross receipts is what they're looking for. All right? Okay, so let's continue. Applicants begin an operation between January 1 through 20. We said that already. Gross receipts, we said that already. So now, you don't need to have a DUNS number, but you do need to have an EIN number, right? And how do you apply? You can apply by three ways. You can go online to restaurants.sba.gov. That's restaurants.sba.gov.gov. You can apply by telephone, which we don't recommend because that's going to delay the process, but the telephone number is 844-279-8898, 844-279-8898. And you can also apply by your POS vendor partners. I know Toast and Square are partners, as well as Aloha. Those are the three POS companies that I know that are partnered with the SBA. So technically what that means is your POS company could submit your total gross receipts along with your application, and the SBA will accept that as a form of a legal form of documentation saying, okay, these were my gross receipts. Okay? Any questions in the chat, Marv?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So now, how much are you eligible for? So let me just give you a high level. And again, when you go online and you submit the application, it's real simple. It actually does the calculations for you. So let's hypothetically say the entity was open before 2019. So you're going to take your 2019 gross receipts and you're going to subtract out your 2020 gross receipts. Now, if you apply for the PPP loans, either the first or the second draw, you still can qualify for this grant. All right, but you need to know what that number is. If you took the first draw on the PPP, you need to know what you took. And if you took the second draw, you need to know what you took, because you have to subtract that out from this loan amount. And then the difference is what the dollar value you'll get. So again, if you were open before 2019, 2019 gross receipts minus 2020 gross receipts minus total received from PPP equals restaurant revitalization grant amount. Everybody with me? All right. So there's a few other ways of calculating that, and you got to figure out which one is the best one for you that will yield you the largest grant, right? So if your entity also if you open during 2019, so that means that not on January 1, you weren't open December 31st, 18, you open February 1, 2019. Then what you're going to do is, because they want to give you the maximum amount. This is they really are looking out. They want to give you the max amount. They're going to allow you to take your average monthly gross receipts for 2019 and then multiply that by 12 months. So you take your average, add them up, right? Multiply it by 12, and then you subtract that from the same thing. You take your gross receipts from 2020 and you multiply that by 12. Then you subtract out the PPP loan. You always have to subtract out the PPP. If you did not receive the PPP, then you don't have to subtract it out. All right. And then again, that's going to give you the amount. All right. So now for entities open during 2020. So either you opened up January 1 and then the pandemic hit March, right? Or you opened up anytime in 2020, maybe even depending on where you are in the country, right? So different parts of the country didn't shut down like they did here in New York City. So New York City shut down slowly. They went from like 50% capacity, they went from 100% to 50 to no indoor dining, but then it was only takeout. So you're still operating during that time. So even if you opened up as a takeout only, delivery only, pickup only operation, you still qualify. This is during 2020. So you take your eligible expenses incurred. So to answer the question from the first gentleman, to say, okay, what expenses did you incur? That means that if you had 3 months to build out and COVID delayed it, and now you started paying rent and your landlord charged you, then that's an eligible, legitimate expense that you incurred that COVID impacted you negatively about, right? So now you can apply for that. You can apply for that dollar amount through the grant. But again, you should really, again, talk to your accountant, make sure your numbers are accurate, make sure you got the proper documentation to support. So that means any invoices that you may have paid for rent, even contractors, they're very liberal in terms of what you can use this. Even people like myself, who I had clients as a consultant, I had clients that got delayed, but I still charged them, right? They still had to pay me. Now they can put that fee, that charge that I charged them in 2020 into this amount, and it's not into the amount, but into the expenses, the eligible expenses that was incurred that delayed them from opening in 2020. All right. So, but let me give you the dates. Very tricky. February 15th, 2020 to March 11th, 2021. Those are the dates. Eligible incurred expenses minus gross receipts, if there were any, total amount received in PPP, subtract that out, and then that's going to give you your grant, what you qualify for, the dollar amount. So when you finish this application, you'll know exactly how much you're getting because, again, they set it up so that you will, when you get to the end of the application, it's going to tell you what you qualify for. All right. Any questions in the chat yet?
Yes, we have a question from Nicole Watson.
Nicole Watson. Hello, Nicole Watson.
She says, our restaurant uses Square, DoorDash, Grubhub, and an online service. Square will link to the SBA for gross receipts. What about the other platforms? How do we submit gross receipts for those? Can we just get a PDF from those companies and upload those, or do we need something more formal from our accountant?
Okay, so remember I talked about that 1099, or maybe the 1099 is what allows the credit card companies and third-party deliveries. They have to supply that 1099 to you because to show that you paid sales tax, show that they're charging sales tax. All right. So now, the answer to the question is, again, gross receipts means all revenue in whatever form received. Right. So, Marvin, read the question to me again so I make sure I'm answering all parts because it sounded like it was a two-part question.
She says, our restaurant uses Square,
DoorDash,
Grubhub, and an online service.
Yep.
Square will link to the SBA for gross receipts. How about the other companies?
Yeah, so that's what you need. That's gross receipts. So Square, it will give you the gross receipts. Those other companies, you will request a 1099-K to ensure the credit card companies are processing that for you, and you'll be good. You should be good there. Okay, great question though. Where are you calling from? What part of the country is she coming from?
I'll let you know as soon as she responds.
Okay.
Oh, Maryland, she says.
Maryland, okay. Shout out to Maryland down there. All right. All right, I was just checking I got a text message from somebody too with a question. Okay, so Receipts do not include net capital gains or losses, right? That's not what they're talking about. Gross receipts from 2020 do not include any amounts received from Paycheck Protection Loan. We said that already. All right. Now, some of you may have also applied for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan from the SBA, which is the EIDL loan. The beautiful thing about this loan, this grant, is going forward, once you get it, you can actually utilize it to pay your PPP if any of it flipped over into a loan, or even your injury disaster loan, your EIDL loan. They call them EIDL. Which is the Economic Injury Disaster, which was already out there, but that came from the SBA before. That, you know, lots of times that came with credit checks, that came with personal guarantees, and all those things. So this is a very liberal grant that they're issuing to us in the restaurant industry, and I'm happy. I'm happy that we're going to be able to help some of these small businesses do what they got to do. All right. So now that's a little bit about how they're calculating the gross receipts and how they're calculating your eligibility amount. So having said all of that, let's talk a little bit about eligible expenses. This is the sweet part, right? So what are eligible expenses for the Rrfg? They're calling it Rrfg, Restaurant Recovery Fund grant. The following expenses are eligible if occurred between February 15th, 2020 and March 11th, 2023. So basically what this is saying is that you have until March 11th, 2023 to use all the grant money that you've received. All right? And the following expenses are eligible. Business payroll costs, including sick leave, costs related to the continuation of group health care, life, disability, vision, and dental. During the payback period, they also paid sick, medical, and family leave, and group health care, life, disability, vision, and dental insurance premiums. All are eligible to use, you can use these funds for, right? Payments continue. Payments on any business mortgage obligations, both principal and interest. But you can't prepay, right? So you could, if you own the building that you house the restaurant in and it has a mortgage on it, you can pay, once you get the loan, the grant, not a loan. Once you get the grant, you can then pay the monthly mortgage, principal and interest with the grant money. I know, right? You get some hand claps for that, right? Let's drop some claps for that. Golly, right? So now, if you have rent, again, you can't say to your landlord, all right, let me pay you rent for a year, but you can pay for a year up to 2023. You can pay every month utilizing this grant, all right? So that's rent. Under any lease agreements, clearly you need to have a legal, a lease in play. Business debt, both principal and interest. So business debt, what? You live in America, debt is a loan. So if you have a loan out there that you were borrowing for your business, then you can pay this off. Credit cards, things of that nature, legitimate business expenses, as long as, again, it's not personal, but through business, all right? Business utility payments, gas bill, water bill, telephone bill, internet access, any other utilities used in ordinary course of business for which the business began before March 11, 2021. Continued eligible expenses. Maintenance, including maintenance on walls, floors, deck surfaces, furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Right? Construction for outdoor seating only. You can't use the money to expand your business. Right, that's not legit, right? But outdoor seating is approved. All right, business supplies, including protective equipment and cleaning supplies, right? PPE equipment, PPE equipment, right? Business food and beverage expenses, including raw materials for beer, wines, and spirits. Covered supplier costs, expenditures made for eligible entities as supplier of goods or services. So basically, your cost of goods. perishable goods, dry goods, paper products, all of that. Business operating expenses, which is defined as a business operating expense incurred through normal business operations that are necessary and mandatory for the business. Again, we said rent, equipment, supplies, inventory, accounting, training, legal, marketing, insurance, licenses. Business operating expenses do not include expenses that occur outside of the company's day-to-day activities. So technically, you can hire a restaurant scientist. Now, you can get the grant, and now you can afford to bring me on board. No, I'm just joking. Woo, let's get some hand claps for that one. Ah. So this is a very liberal grant, right? It's money that you do not have to pay back. Now, how do you demonstrate, right? Once you get this grant, how do you demonstrate to the SBA that you did the right things with it? Great question. I'm glad you asked that. So by December 31st, so if you get the grant, right, basically it's going to take about, once you fill out the application, they're going to give you the money. They're saying within 14 days. So 14 to 21 days. So what is this, May 3rd? So if you get the grant by May 20th, right? June, July, August, September, October, November, December 30th, you have to go back to the same portal that you applied and demonstrate and upload the receipts to the SBA to say, okay, I've received $5,000, and so far I've spent $5,000, and here's what I spent it on, and you upload your rent or whatever approved expenses that we just spoke about, right? You upload those receipts. You have to keep proper paperwork, right? If you don't spend, you don't have to spend it all this year. So every year until you've spent all of the funds, you have to, by December 31st of that year, you have to go back to the portal and tell the SBA what you've done with the money. It's really just that simple. And when it's gone, it's gone. All right. Now they will be doing audits, so be prepared for that. So if the entity fully expends the funds prior to December 31st, 2021, it will be asked to certify the application portal that the proceeds have been used on eligible expenses. The same thing I just said, right? Recipients that do not fully expend all awards funds prior to December 31st, 2021, which is this year, will be required to complete annual reporting submissions until funds are fully expended. And you have until 2023 to spend all of the funds. All right, now the SBA reserves the right to request supplemental documents needed to validate and certify that you've done the right things with the money. Now, any unused funds by March 11th, 2023, any unused funds need to be returned back to the SBA by March 11th, 2023. Okay. Any questions in the chats, brother?
Yes, we have a question from Charles Gray. He says, are food trucks also eligible?
Charles Gray, absolutely. Food trucks are eligible. Where you calling from, Charles? Where you at, brother?
We have another question also from Nicole. Actually, two questions. She says, he's also from Maryland.
Maryland's in the house. Shout out Maryland.
Nicole has two more questions.
Okay.
What is the processing time from application to receipt of funds?
They're telling me 14 days.
Okay, her second.
Today is the first day. Now, again, I'm sure, there is expecting a lot of people to apply. Now, also, let me tell you what they're doing. They're prioritizing the first 21 days, female, black-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, and those businesses that are in economically depressed areas as the first 21-day application. So no one else can apply, but they're only processing, and in order to verify that you are minority-owned or female-owned, that's where you're going to get to that. Remember I talked about that partnership and shares and all that? That's when those SBA IRS forms that will show the delineation of the ownerships and shares. So all you need to do is 51% female, minority owned businesses, and they're going to process those for the first 21 days after that. And it's a first come, first served basis. So after that, the money may go quickly. But 14 days is what they're saying right now. 14 days.
Okay, there was a second part to her question. She says, we were not eligible for the PPP because on the date we opened, we did receive a small grant from the local county we operated in. Does that need to be factored into this application?
When did she open? When did you open, Nicole?
April 17th, 2020.
April 17th, 2020. Okay. So, yeah, actually is going to help you now because the PPP was a forgivable, part of it was forgivable as long as you only used it for payroll, right? So if you used it for anything other than payroll, then it flipped over into a loan with low interest, but nonetheless, that's a different animal. So now you don't have to subtract that. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your average, remember I said that earlier, you're going to take your average gross receipts for 2020, multiply it times 12. You're not going to subtract out any PPP, and that's what you're going to get, Cole. It's actually going to help you now because this is a grant, and it's much more liberal in terms of what you can spend the money on. Again, you can't prepay anything going forward, but you can pay your rent, you can pay your insurance, you can pay your food costs, you can pay vendors, it's not free money, but it's a good thing. So I'm hoping I answered your question, Nicole. Just give me the thumbs up or down if I answered your question. Anybody else that I didn't answer your questions, come back. Let me know because I want to answer questions. Again, I'm not an accountant. I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice or accounting advice. Still talk to your accountants, talk to your attorneys about what you need to do before you sign any document because you're going to have to sign this document. This is the SBA. This is the government. So let's not get it twisted. This is America, right? So don't play around and thinking, oh, I'm going to get this money, I'm going to do whatever. But it's very liberal. You can't use it for personal things. But if you got a business, your business needs it anyway, it's going to be helpful. So just make sure that they all, everybody feels like I answered their questions there, Marv.
Nicole says, thank you. Can you give that formula again, please?
Yep. All right. So when, again, when you go to the website, Nicole, it'll show you because there's two eligibilities because you came up with, you started in 2020. So your formula is average gross receipts for 2020 times 12 is going to give you your dollar amount because you don't need to subtract out the PPP. Now, did she say she had a POS system that she was using?
She didn't mention.
She didn't mention it?
No.
So, again, Nicole, you're going to need your bank statements for the last 3 months.
Oh, forgive me, Square.
Square, okay, all right. So, yeah, print that out, PDF that for the whole year. Use that as documentation to show, like, this is what my gross receipts were. PDF it. PDF your EIN number, all your corporate documents. I said bank statements already. Yeah, I said that, right? And upload them into the system. And any shareholders agreements, or I don't know if you're a partnership or LLC or a C Corp, whatever it is, have all your documents ready.
You said very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, see us in the food service business. We get pleasure out of that. Like when I cook some food and people like my food, I just want to see them smile and be like, oh shit, I did what I do, So yeah, that's why we're here. That's what EatOkra is about. EatOkra is that community that we already said that at the top of the show. We're the ones that's connecting community and people together in the restaurant food service game, food trucks, caterers, the whole nine. All right. So now let's go through the application process. We're winding down here. So, Nicole, here's what you're going to do. When you go to the SBA website, what you're first going to do is you're going to register. There's a registration process. When you register, you're going to get you need a valid email address and a telephone number. Then they're going to give you that. That's how they're going to communicate with you. So you're going to register at the SBA application portal at restaurants.sba.gov, right? And registration actually opened up on Friday, but that's all right. Today's just the first. You registered on Friday, the day the application process started. So you should be fine. Don't worry about this. But basically, once you register, this allows you to become a user. And your credentials will be your username and password, your username and password, and become familiar with the portal. You should book this tab clearly on your computer so you can go back to it again. All right. And I'm just going to go. So that's step one. Step two is sign up for the SBA RRF's email updates, and they'll send you updates. Because basically, I think what's going to happen is they're going to run out of money. And I know that the National Restaurant Association and others are already lobbying on behalf of, getting more money. So, just sign up to get those email updates from the SBA. And it also, let me just tell y'all, I know some of us, people of color, we operate off the grid. What do I mean by operate off the grid? We don't apply, because the three things have always been in our way, right? Capital, credit, access to capital, good credit, and credit our business history. This is a great opportunity for you to establish your business credit with the SBA, right? So now the SBA is going to know that you're on the radar, and they're going to show, you're going to demonstrate to them that you're a responsible food service operator. So in the future, if you do need a loan, you can apply for a loan and get those low interest loans, because a lot of times we don't understand the cost of capital. So therefore, we'll go out and we'll raise some money from investors, but an investor is going to want 12, 15, 16, 18% return on investment, whereas a loan may be 4 or 5% interest. So you can clearly see that the cost of capital is expensive when you're really talking about equity investors. But a lot of times that's our only route, because the criteria were set up against us. We don't have to go into the whole American economic system, and how it really has excluded people of color. But nonetheless, we do have to, if this is an opportunity for us to get our foot in the door and build that relationship with the SBA and banks, so that, in a few years we can go back to expand our restaurant or to buy new equipment, and we don't have to get these high interest loans or get equity or give up equity in our businesses that comes with a high cost. Clearly, is high reward, high risk, high reward. But this is my point here, is that this is really an opportunity for us to wake up and say, well, let's get our books together. One, because many of us are not doing bookkeeping on a weekly basis. Our paperwork is kind of raggedy, right? And this is an opportunity for us to say, okay, let's, going forward, make sure that we take care of some of those in-house things that we were neglecting prior to. All right, so that was this little sidebar, soapbox kind of thing, because I think there's learning opportunities here for all of us. One, register with the SBA application. Step two, sign up for the email update. Step three, prepare the necessary business documents, which must be in PDF, JPG, GIF, TIFF, or PNG file format. Those are the formats that are acceptable. All right. Again, be diligent about the application process. Incomplete documentations will only reject and or delay your application. So please make sure that you're very thorough about what you need. For entities, now I'm gonna go in order now. For entities open before 2020, documents required before 2020. Application SBA Form 3172, that's the actual form. Tax verification IRS 4506T. I told you what that was earlier. That's just the IRS. That's just their form, the SBA's form saying, okay, I'm going to hit up the IRS and they're going to send me your tax returns. So don't try to lie to me, because I'm going to see what it is. If you didn't file tax returns, that may hurt you. All right. 2019 tax returns as filed. 2019 tax returns as filed. All right. 3 months of the most recent bank statements from the account that you would like to receive the grant in. Right. So don't send them bank statements from another account and say, okay, deposit the money in this account. Don't do that. They're telling you don't do that. I'm telling you don't do it. All right. So wherever your bank account is, that's the same account you want to use, because that's the same account when they approve you in 14 to 21 days, or however long it takes. That's where the money's going. They're not going to cut you a check. They're not going to call you up and say, come up, pick up. They're going to just put that money directly into that account. And if it's less than 3 months old, they're not going to approve you, from what I'm being told. All right. 2020 gross receipts documents, at least one of the following. Again, what's preferred, 2020 federal tax returns filed. No one has filed it because they gave us an extension. I think we got like another week or two for that. All right. But here's what is preferred. Here's what's going to allow you. Again, the partners, the SBA partners, point of sale systems, they'll take your point of sales report. All right. They will take your point of sales report for 2020. 2019 tax returns, 2020 sales report from your POS company. All right. Other acceptable documents would be externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as an income statement or profit and loss statement, signed and dated and certified as accurate by the applicant, right? Now, if that particular document, if you submit that document, what they're saying is to you is, if you don't have your POS report and the other documents, you probably won't get approved in 14 days, because that's going to delay. They're going to go through the ones that all the paperwork is tight. They're going to go through those, and they're just going to stamp approve, and then they're going to start divvying out money into accounts. When they open up your application and, it's a little raggedy, that 14-day number that I told you about is not applicable to any raggedy applications, all right? Now, it doesn't mean you won't get it. It just means that, you just need to be a little more polished. So just be on the lookout for it may take a little longer, all right? So that was for entities open before 2020. Before 2020. Now, entities open in 2020 or later, here's the documents that you need. Again, same SBA form 3172, tax verification 4506T. We talked about that. You still need to bring your 3 months of bank statements, most recent bank statements to the account, on the account. 2020 gross receipts documents, and or one of the following. Preferred federal tax returns if you have it. Point of sales report if you have it. Acceptable external and internal prepared financial statements. So same thing there. 2021 gross receipts, because now these are the opportunities, these are the entities that open up after 2021, right? So gross receipt documents, prepared point of sale system, and again, what's accepted is internal. So you do your own POS. So you got some spreadsheet you have that is either QuickBooks or just a regular Excel spreadsheet. They'll accept it, but that 14-day evaluation period is not applicable to you. It's going to take a little longer. All right. Again, doesn't mean that it's going to be denied. Just means that they're going to have to go through it a little closer to look at the documents, and then get it out to you. Any questions in the chat?
Nothing so far.
Okay. So required documents for eligibility February 20. All right. So that's that. All right. So that was step 3. Step 4. Know what to do if there's any problems. They're just giving you a call center to 844-279-8898. They're available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time if you have any questions or problems. And step 5 is to actually, submit the documentations. Step 5 and 6 is submit the documentations and complete and submit the application. Step 7 is once you submit and sign, the completion of the application DocuSign package will be sent to the email entered in the application portal. So basically what they're going to do is you're going to submit the application. They're going to acknowledge that they received the application. And then once they process your paperwork, they're going to send you a DocuSign document. The same thing I applied for the injury economic disaster loan last year. And it was the same thing. But they ran a credit check on me for that. So first they ran my credit, and then they approved me, and then they came back and they sent me the DocuSign, and I signed it, and then a couple of days later, the money was in the account. Same thing here is, except no credit check, no personal guarantees. And once they review your application, they'll send you the document, the DocuSign, and all approved funds will be deposited into the bank account entered into the application. And then lastly is, make a plan. Make a plan to make sure that you really keep your paperwork, tight going forward. And again, you have until 2023 to spend those funds. And we wish you luck. We wish you luck on everything. Any questions in the chat before I wrap up here?
Yes. Nicole wants to know, what's the form again you mentioned for 51% ownership to prove minority woman owned?
So it's going to be your 1065, your IRS form 1065 and K1. And it'll also be on your corporate filing paperwork. So it depends on what type of corp you have. Nicole, if you have an LLC or S Corp or C Corp, in those corporate documents, upload them, PDF them, and it'll show your ownership. It'll show who else is part of that corporation. Now, as far as them asking you, well, first of all, you're female, so you're good there, and as long as you are 51% owning your company, they're not going to get into your ethnicity and all those other things. So. Yeah, that's it. Did I answer your question?
Nicole also states, we started a restaurant in 2020 and had a food truck being worked on, such as brand new equipment. Can we tie them all together on this grant?
Great question. Are they in the same EIN number? It's the same corporation, different companies.
In the meantime, Mark Jeffries says, thank you for the info, Chief. Much appreciated.
No problem, brother.
Yeah, same corp.
Same corp, yeah. So again, talk to your accountant. Make sure that you demonstrate the differences. The same corp, but two different businesses. Is she saying one's a food truck and one's a brick and mortar restaurant? Yeah. Speak to your accountant about that. For sure. Because those are different gross receipts and they're different expenses, but they both do qualify. So, and that might be a question for the hotline too, for the SBA hotline. I don't want to give you any wrong information there. But if they were different entities, you could, you got up to, $5 million, $10 million aggregate, $5 million per location. So. She cool?
Y'all cool. Everybody's chilling.
Okay. So, EatOkra is the bomb. Let's give EatOkra a shout out.
It says, this is awesome. Thank you very much.
Yes, that's what we're here for. We just want to give free educational information, connecting people and places. And that's a wrap in this webinar session. I want to thank you for joining us. We appreciate you for tuning in and hope you learned something valuable from today's webinar. As I mentioned at the top of the session, if you are a Black restaurateur, caterer, food truck owner, or even a food product developer, and you haven't already joined the EatOkra community, go to our website at www.eatokra.com and sign up today. Gain access to over 330,000 diners, foodies looking to support Black culinary creators like yourself. Also, for those of you joining us on YouTube, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. My name is Jason Wallace, also known as the Restaurant Scientist and Director of Business Solutions at EatOkra. Until we meet again, peace.